Hey there, I'm Lee Rowley, and this is Lee After Dark. Why? Because there's more to being a business leader than just business. Each episode, one brave entrepreneur ejects the elevator pitch and just gets real. Today, I'd like to welcome Jedidiah Collins. Jed, how are you, my friend?
I am doing wonderful. I actually get to wake up back on my campus. So I'm back at Washington State teaching some classes. So it's been fun kind of being back in the academia world for a day or two.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying that, and we are glad to have you, and thank you for spending some time with us today. Now, the rules are simple. For the next 20 minutes, we can talk about anything you want except your business, right?
Absolutely.
After that, you've got 5 minutes to tell us about what you do, tell people how you get in touch with you. If you got an offer to share, that's great. The floor is yours at that point. So, but each time that you mention your business during the interview, we'll take off 1 minute of pitch time at the end. So, you know, we're on a demerit system here, right?
I like the accountability.
Very cool. Yeah, hey, that's what it's all about. So, I'll tell you what, you ready to go here? I'll go ahead and get
Let's
the
rock and roll.
timer started. And all right, well, awesome. Let's get started. You talked about when you sent over some information, that whole journey, from where you started out. And those who aren't familiar, maybe we'll tell a little about your journey and what they can learn from it.
Absolutely. So my journey was a unique kind of one. I was raised in a family where we were students first and athletes second. And so my time on a college campus, I was studying. I was planning on becoming an accountant. I was going to get my GMAT. I actually remember very vividly riding up my senior year with a man in a Chargers polo in an elevator. And as we got off, he asked me where the head coach's office was. And I was like, oh, I got 2 minutes. I'll walk you over there. And as we were walking over there, he was like, all right, Jed, how are you feeling about the season? I was like, how does this guy know who I am? And he was a scout. He was there. And, that it was kind of the first moment that the NFL dream was somewhat becoming a reality. Like the possibility was starting to be there. That being said, I went undrafted. Being told no by all 32 teams is a humbling experience, especially when, you have friends and family joining you and you're been told and your expectations are somebody's going to call you and change your life. But going to my rookie year in Philadelphia, I went very naive. I went with a lot of pizzazz and encouragement and excitement. And about 13 times being told no and getting cut again, I bonded together what I wanted my takeaways to be from the game. So few guys get to walk away from the game of football with things to show for it and get to look at the game for all that it gives us. So many are left looking at the game for what it's taken. And it was my objective to see football for all that it gave me. And that challenged myself to give that a thought experiment. Having traveled to 10 teams, been in 10 cities, but 10 organizations, what was the lessons I walked away with? And that's what's really neat about the experience is you reflect on your life, and Steve Jobs, the dots kind of connect backwards. I got to be around the best in the world and see how they operate and try to truly steal a little tidbit from each and every person I was around. And that mindset has not stopped since I left football. I get to do that in the corporate world today and amongst entrepreneurs and just all kinds of ideas. So maintaining that athletic curiosity of how to get better has definitely suited me well.
Awesome. I love that you bring up curiosity because that's something that transcends disciplines and makes us all excellent at what we do. That's absolutely fascinating. It's something that allows me to have this conversation with you from such vastly different backgrounds. And I was occasionally used as the football, but that was about it, right? But just to be able to make that connection was really cool. And now I have to ask, you talked about the NFL dream. So if you're about that high, was that ever in your head at that point growing up?
It really wasn't.
No?
Truly, my family was basketball focused.
Okay.
And so, the idea of football, I actually quit football my freshman year of high school. After my freshman year, and found it again as I transferred schools and had a head coach, Bob Johnson, who changed my life with the simple question of, where do you think you're going for basketball? And at 6'1", the options were very limited. But like I said, I applaud my parents because we saw athletics as a vehicle, as a tool to get us to our career, to get us to an education, the possibility of a free education. And so growing up, it wasn't. I didn't have television, which growing up named Jedidiah and not having TV, I got quite a few Amish jokes.
Sure.
But we didn't have television growing up, and that kind of eliminated a little bit of that. I saw this last night during the game. Like I got to watch Michael Jordan or Joe Montana or whoever played growing up as a kid. I want to go be them. It eliminated a little bit of that like mystique of what being a professional athlete meant. But I was as a young person always identified as the jock. So I identified as the stereotype, but I didn't necessarily have the like long-term vision or dream of that it actually come into fruition.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. So you talked about some of the principles that guided you along your journey, and you've played for quite a few teams, right? So
yes.
What has sustained you along that journey?
A great foundation and family. I have a beautiful wife who has allowed me to chase it. Having conversations with my two brothers, who one is an attorney and one is an engineer, and during my struggles and my trials, calling them and them being like, "Hey, reality is going to be there, so chase this dream as long as you can." That was really helpful for me to know that. But truly, it was identifying myself and being able to take away some of those key principles. The number one was being goal-oriented, having a goal and a focus, and truly identifying what my most was going to be, allowed me to preserve and withstand some of like the minor setbacks. And I think as an entrepreneur, that is always a lesson that you can take away is I've identified my 5-10 year vision and goal. I've also identified my 1 year or my 1 month goal. And even though I get punched in the gut or I get sidetracked, for me, it was a phone call that blindsided me and told me the dream and was over and I needed to pack up my locker and go home. Even with those instances, as long as I kept focused and kept working towards that goal, my results were going to be goal focused and not just the day-to-day transactions. And that was one of the most pivotal ideas around people's ability to value what they want most over what they want right now. That principle goes into every aspect of our life. But truly being able to identify, all right, my goal is always going to be more valuable than this momentary setback or this momentary gain. And at first you see it as a sacrifice, but as you begin to be around more successful people, they're not sacrificing by any means, they're prioritizing. And it was that mindset shift for me that really, really helped.
That is awesome. You shared an article with me, and I hope you'll touch on that a little bit, because it was just as I'm reading this and you're describing something called being invited to the cocktail party. And after I got done reading that article, Jed, I have to tell you, I had to go get the icy hot. I was like, yeah, man, I hurt just from reading that. So, and that was kind of a pivotal thing for you.
It was the point of no return for me. Yes. And one, as a young writer, to hear something I put out is moving, is probably the most rewarding thing I can tell you. So truly, truly appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Yeah. But the cocktail party was one of those morbid realities of a violent game. We would sit in film study, and a positive in one of those kind of skins on the wall trophy collisions was knocking a guy unconscious and having his arms lock up to the point he looks like he's holding martini glasses and is at a cocktail party. And it is such a gruesome story to tell. And then like you're in the moment and it doesn't feel as gruesome. And we're sitting on the morning after Myles Garrett and an incident with the Browns and the Steelers last night. And you see a little insight into that violence of the game. Professional football is absolutely controlled violence and controlled chaos, but being a pro, you have to emphasize that control element. On this situation, the cocktail party discussion, it wasn't my collision, but I saw a young man unconscious on the field, and the game was delayed probably 20, 25 minutes. And as I walked to the sideline, really what shattered in me was that glass of invincibility. Youth, as a young person, you always believe you're going to live forever and, nothing can destroy you. And, pound on the rock all you want. I'm a solid rock. But as I see that young man strapping himself to a table and being carted off the field, I look up into the stands and see my newborn 4-month-old daughter. And she has these big pink headphones on, sitting and, being held by my wife, and something just shattered. Something I never wanted to admit from myself, and something that I'd, overcome every time I stepped onto the field was that fear. And that question of, can I go make money doing something else other than putting my body at risk? Because I was a fullback, my job, I was paid to move people against their will, and it was a position of collision and violence. So there was not going to be any hiding. There was no chance I could do it and not do my job. And so I see my daughter, and for the first time in my life, I walked towards the locker room. I was like, I can't go back out there. I don't want to go back out there. And as I would take 2 or 3 steps, my mind just goes numb, and I start racing in 6 different ways. And I just went and sat down on the bench next to the young man who was actually in the collision, and he's in a daze, and I'm in a separate daze, but one just as kind of intoxicating. And it was just that thought process of, okay, what do I do? Walking away is quitting, and I don't like the idea of quitting, quitting on my team, quitting on my paychecks, quitting on my future, quitting on this dream. But I also came to the realization of walking out on that field, that risk was real. There's this monster that you kind of try to shy away from and believe that you're bigger and stronger and tougher than. And that monster looked me dead in the eye and just smiled. And I went back out on the field, but you better believe from that moment forward, I wasn't the same player. I wasn't the same fullback by any means. I was trying to accomplish my job with as little head collision, but with as little violence as possible. And that's just simply not a demeanor you can have on the field, because the moment you're not going 100%, you're putting more of yourself at risk. So it was a pivotal moment. I was really glad to have captured it, because I love journaling. One of the things I encourage college students and people about to walk into their freedom years to do is to write. I think it is just such a self-reflection, a meditation, and truly a great documentation of a lot of different things. And so I was fortunate to have my journal entries from that night and to look back on them and just in awe of what that moment meant to me.
Absolutely. It was definitely powerful and haunting, and you've given other people a glimpse into a world that they would otherwise never get to see, because it looks completely different, from the couch, watching it on the big screen TV and munching on Cheetos. It's just to see the reality of it, like I say, is completely humbling. So I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I want to make sure we squeeze in, because we do have a few minutes left, you tossed me the phrase "king for a day," and I'm like, all right, I got a bite. What's that about?
I like it. So this is going back to kind of my upbringing and a little insight on my father and then also my brothers. But again, it defined one of the principles that I've set for myself. So king for a day, again, we're a basketball family, and so we would play in the backyard. We'd shoot and rebound and shoot and rebound and shoot and rebound. And then we'd play one-on-one basketball. 3 brothers, tee it up, you score, you get to stay, and the other brother comes on and plays defense. And the winner got to be king for the day. So the winner of the contest would get to look at the other 2 brothers and say, hey, somebody's got to take out the trash, or somebody's got to go feed the dogs, or, you know, even my dad would kind of jump in on it and be like, you know, the kennel hasn't been cleaned in a little while. Lenny, who should go do that? And it was like, oh man, that's a tough response, but it built within us that competitive spirit. It built within us a lot of things, but specifically within me, again, as I looked back and reflected upon that, one of my greatest skills is what you were talking about of perseverance and being able to deal with adversity and losing without being defeated. And I look at King for a Day, and I was the youngest brother, and both of my brothers played Division I college basketball, so they were pretty good. And I won in my childhood. I can vividly remember 3 different times. And we played King for a Day every day and weekend. And so I look at the thousands of times I played without winning. And yet I would be able to approach it with the same kind of discipline, see my focus, see my attitude. I would prepare, and I would consistently show up and compete, even though there was probably a part of me that knew I wasn't going to come out victorious. And I look at that today, and I call it today mowing your grass. And that idea of there's so much about our lives that are outside of our control. What I need to focus on is my own backyard. And that preparation, that focus, but most importantly, my attitude. I looked at how I would go out onto the court in the backyard and give it my all. I was relentless, even though I was, quote unquote, failing or losing over and over again. And as I look at college, going to college and struggling in my academics at times, struggling in the athletic field at times, I go into the NFL, I get cut 13 times. I go into my career afterwards, and I get tossed and twirls all over the place as I become an entrepreneur. There's continual setbacks. And I look back at King for a Day, and I see that the principle of mowing my grass really established back there on that court in the backyard, and how I take forward with it is that idea that one thing I do control is my attitude, and how I need to do that is by investing in myself, whether it's writing, breathing, going for a walk, or having a beer, whatever it is. That intention is really important. And it's just one of those funny things. And I am currently actually working on an article around King for a Day, because nice. It's a funny little story and lesson that you don't, if you don't sit and reflect, you don't see where the principle or where the foundation began. And that was something a few months ago that I was actually at home with my brothers, and we were talking about it, and they were joking about how often I lost. And I was like, that's probably where the idea came, that I'm okay with losing, because I don't lose. I either win or I learn, and I keep grinding, I keep showing up. So it's just one of those fun little tidbits of how I was raised that developed into who I am today.
That is really cool. And thank you for sharing that with us. That's absolutely fantastic. That little glimpse into, to what drove your success and continues to drive what you do today. And speaking of that, you have successfully completed the 20-minute Lee After Dark Don't Talk About My Business challenge. So, invisible confetti and all that, right? So, I am a man of my word. I'll give you 5 minutes on the clock here to talk about your business and whatever you want to do with that. So the floor is yours.
So one, I can't believe it's been 20 minutes. Very easy and enjoyable conversation, Lee.
Thank you.
So my mission is to empower people to own their financial story. I, again, played in the National Football League. I was handed a big check my rookie year of about $30,000. And when a check like that comes in, a lot of people would do a lot of different things. I'm humbled and kind of honored to say I was a spender. I was no different than the vast majority of people. My father was an attorney. He knew nothing about money other than go make it and avoid debt. And so I spent that first check before I really even landed in my bank account. Sappy, cute story. I bought an engagement ring. My wife and I have celebrated 10 years, yada, yada, yada. I tell her to this day that was a poor financial decision, and it was an uneducated decision. And from that moment, that very similar to the cocktail party, from that moment of big check came in, big check went out, I realized if I continue down this path, I'm going to be one of the statistics. I'm going to be the 70% of professional athletes who walk away with nothing to show for it. And so I turned to those brothers who was getting a master's degree at Berkeley and a law degree at Harvard, and asked them, hey, if you guys got this check, what would you do? And my light bulb really went off when they had no answers. So it was no longer a Jed fault of, hey, a big dumb jock missed this class. That wasn't me, but I assumed like I missed something while I was on campus. If I look at the highest echelon of education and these guys don't know the answers, there's a much bigger problem here. And so I set out on a journey to become my first student, to educate myself. In the off seasons during football, during the NFL, I'd be studying to get my CFP. I actually would take CFP books on road trips, and I would hide them from guys on the team and coaches, and because I didn't want them to think I was distracted or anything like that. And so today I look at it and say, I transitioned from the game, and I saw my mentor who challenged me to get the CFP, and he's an advisor, and I love to see him go to work, but my heart is not so much in wealth management. It's not so much in helping people who have assets. My idea and my mission and my company goes to, well, how do I empower people who maybe are in a different phase of their life and are looking for setting up a plan and getting education and really dialing in the beginning pieces of that end journey. And so that's where I stand today. I wrote a book. The book's going to come out in January. I teach courses and classes to companies. I love going to colleges. Truly, the variety of audiences I get to experience is really tremendous. In the last, let's say, month or two, I've been to Amazon and Microsoft, large corporations. I've been in warehouses with men and women in hard hats and vests. I've taught PhDs doing cancer research. I've taught professional athletes with the Seahawks or the Detroit Lions. I've gone to high schools. I've been on college campuses. Just this week, I got to deliver at a law school conference, and having their administrators come up and say, these are the kind of classes that our students need to better understand. So where I stand today is I want to be 100% a financial educator. I want to entertain people. I want to engage them. I don't do presentations or keynotes as much. I do workshops. I engage people and make sure they have something to do. You always have to educate, and then you have to empower. What is the actionable takeaway that you not only learned, but you're going to go change about your life? And so the basis of my curriculum is to get people to see that it's a financial story, that they are in control of it. Two words I've removed from my vocabulary are budget, because the budget is limiting and controlling. I replaced that with cash management because I control my cash management, and retirement. Retirement is a number, and it's a focal end. And instead you say freedom, and freedom is a choice and is defined by a purpose. And so I help people from their cash management days all the way up through their freedom days, their first paycheck to their last paycheck, and identifying how to use those dollars. Each dollar should have a purpose. If it's I made $1, I saved a dime, 10% going to future you, that's a great purpose. But the intention is through education, I want you to U, understand money, S, strategize money, and E, be efficient with money, USE. I want you to use money because that puts you in control of it. Money is a vehicle. Money is something that you have to get behind the driver's seat and take it to your destination. The idea of pensions and Social Security are beyond and in the past, and they are no longer going to get you to that destination. You have to sit behind the driver's seat of your own financial vehicle and decide not only where you're going, but how you're going to get there. And the reality is, it is 100% on us. If you don't care about future you, nobody else is going to. And we're going to live 90s into our hundreds. And we are the first generation truly that this education, financial literacy, financial education, financial wellness is a necessary skill of survival, because we're going to have to develop a plan that is going to take us to our freedom day, but then much farther beyond that as well. So that's where I stand, Jedidiah Collins. I love discussing a variety of topics. Again, I've created workshops. I write a lot. Social media is a great way to connect with me. As I begin to launch more and more of that here in January, I'm going to start or at least launch my YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm all over all the time. And I love just getting introduced to people like yourself, Lee, because you have remained to be a curious person. You've engaged with tons and hundreds of people in trying to help others see the light. And the one thing I've started to learn about podcasting and social media is it's a funny thing. I'm sure your first podcast you sat down was like, this is kind of weird. And then one day somebody came up to you and was like, Lee, I really enjoyed that. I needed that. I took something from that. And you see the lens shape from, I'm just some person with something to say, to I have a message, I have a purpose, and people are getting something out of it. And as I grow in my infancy as an entrepreneur and as my infancy as this mission, having students, young and old, come up to me and tell me I helped impact their lives, that's the only energy I need. Getting to meet people like you and share my message, this is the best energy I could hope for from today. So thank you.
That is awesome. So people, if people want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to do that right now?
Yeah, Jedidiah Collins on LinkedIn would be great. I also have Instagram because a variety of young people told me I had to, so I joined that about 3 months ago. Collins 45. And truly on that front, I am seriously considering in January joining TikTok because I think you have to now. I think it's if you have a message, get it out there. It's a tough game, but it's one of those things. So yes, LinkedIn would be great. Instagram's easy. But I love questions. I love feedback. And as I created level 1 and level 2 curriculum, we're doing nothing but creating more.
Awesome. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes. And if you get going on TikTok, let me know so we can include that link, because I want to see this. I really do. I've been scratching my head about TikTok for a while. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But God, kudos to you for having, for being willing to jump out there and do that. So thank you again for sharing your insights and your knowledge with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Any last words before we wrap up?
Not at all. Hope everyone enjoys the day. Remember, success is just a moment gone by, so you got to enjoy the process. So thank you, and have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we are out of time, but if you found Lee After Dark more entertaining and relevant than most of the drag out there, subscribe to the Lee After Dark YouTube channel, and now get Lee After Dark in your pants. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Stitcher, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and who the heck knows where else. So you can enjoy us wherever you stick your phone. Until next time, this is Lee Rowley with my new friend, Jed Collins. Be present and be well.